Imagine you're walking down Main Street in your town, right? And you're looking for a place to grab a coffee.
Okay, I'm with you.
So you see 4 different shops. They all look great. They all have a decent line of customers out the door. And they all seem to be, competing completely fairly for your business.
Like a normal free market.
Exactly. But what you do not see, what is completely hidden from view, is that the local city government is secretly subsidizing 3 of those shops.
Yeah.
Like handing them massive financial grants.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and they're doing it simply to prevent the 4th largest shop from buying up the entire block and turning your whole town into a corporate monopoly.
That's a really good way to frame it.
Right.
Because that's exactly what's happening under the hood.
Right, because when you log into your crypto staking dashboard, you're essentially looking at Main Street. You see numbers, you see options, and you just assume it's a pure, unadulterated free market at work.
You do. You assume the winners just naturally won.
Today, we are going back to that same dashboard we talked about in our last deep dive, and we are uncovering the hidden economics operating right beneath the surface.
It's basically a brilliant facade. I mean, we look at those 4 core metrics we discussed previously, right? The 30-day uptime, the commission rate, the total stake, and that performance score.
Yeah, those 4 numbers.
And we assume the validators with the best numbers just naturally outcompeted everyone else on their own merit. But the reality of how a blockchain actually secures itself, it's far more engineered than a simple free market.
So I was reading through this stack of technical breakdowns from Atlas Staking, and they're detailing what is called the Starknet Foundation Delegation Program, or the SFDP.
The SFDP.
And reading this, it flips the entire concept of choosing a validator totally on its head. Like, this isn't just about finding a server that stays online anymore.
No, not at all.
We are looking at a system where a network is using its own treasury as this, financial weapon to artificially accelerate decentralization.
A financial weapon is a great term for it.
So the goal for this deep dive is to figure out exactly how this invisible hand operates, how it actively stops monopolies from forming, and why knowing about this program is, well, it's kind of the ultimate cheat code for protecting your own crypto yields.
To really understand why a network would essentially manipulate its own free market like that, we kind of have to look at what happens when a blockchain suddenly succeeds. Because you don't build defense mechanisms unless you are under an actual threat.
And the Atlas staking notes point to a very specific catalyst for this threat, March 2026.
Yes, that was the turning point.
This wasn't just a good month for Starknet. It was an explosive defining period. The network violently transitioned from being this incredibly promising piece of theoretical technology into a massive engine for real-world products.
The floodgates opened.
Exactly. You had sudden, serious innovation, huge transaction volume, and just an absolute flood of capital moving onto the chain.
It was the moment the theoretical finally became practical. The network proved it could handle real scale and, capital responded.
Yeah.
But a massive influx of capital into a proof-of-stake network introduces a terrifying structural vulnerability.
How so?
Well, in proof of stake, the validators who verify transactions and secure the network, they are chosen based on the amount of capital or stake that's delegated to them.
Let me stop you there for a second, because my instinct, just looking at that massive influx of capital, is that it's a pure positive.
It seems like it, yeah.
Right. I mean, if the free market is working and billions of dollars are flowing in, why not just let the biggest, most established, deep-pocketed validators take control? Honestly, if I am a normal user staking my STRK tokens, putting my money with a massive corporate-backed mega validator actually sounds a million times safer than trusting some smaller decentralized operator I have never even heard of. They have the budget for the best engineers and the best security.
That highly logical assumption is exactly what creates the cartel problem.
Wait, cartel?
Yeah. In a purely unmanaged market, capital possesses this terrifying gravity. The biggest validators have the massive marketing budgets to attract retail users. They have the slickest interfaces. They project this illusion of absolute safety. So, naturally, everyone flocks to them.
Well, yeah, because nobody wants to risk getting slashed. I mean, if I delegate to a small validator running a node out of their garage and their power goes out, the network penalizes them.
Exactly.
Getting slashed means the network literally destroys a portion of the staked tokens as a punishment for failing to do the job. I don't want my yield destroyed just because some guy's Wi-Fi dropped.
And that fear, that exact fear of slashing, drives a flight to perceived safety. But let's follow that logic to its natural conclusion. What happens when everyone flocks to the top 3 or 4 giant validators?
Well, I see.
Suddenly, those 4 entities control 70% of all the staked tokens on the entire network.
So they essentially dictate the consensus. They literally control the network.
They form a cartel. And it might not be some smoky backroom conspiracy, it might just be the practical reality of their market share.
Yeah.
But they now have the power to censor specific transactions.
Right.
They could potentially force through changes to the network rules, or even more subtly, they become a catastrophic central point of failure.
Like if one of them goes down.
Exactly. If one of those mega validators suffers a massive security breach, or say a government regulator suddenly orders them to shut down their servers, the entire Starknet ecosystem grinds to a halt.
That defeats the whole purpose. The core value proposition of a blockchain, that it is a decentralized, unstoppable, permissionless global computer that completely evaporates the moment 3 guys in a boardroom can just turn it off.
Exactly. So the network absolutely needs a broad, diverse set of validators, so no single entity can ever hold that kind of leverage.
Okay, but there's a tension there, right? Because having 1,000 diverse, independent validators is basically useless if they don't have any tokens staked to them.
Precisely. A validator's voting power is proportional to their stake.
So the network needs diverse operators, but it also desperately needs enough actual capital locked on those operators to make the network mathematically secure against attacks.
And the free market will never naturally distribute that capital evenly. The big guys will just eat everything. And this is exactly where the Starknet Foundation Delegation program steps in.
Right, the SFDP.
The foundation looks at this cartel problem and essentially decides to use its own treasury to alter the gravity of the market.
The documentation describes it as a stake matching program, but it's tied to incredibly strict performance requirements.
It acts as a targeted subsidy. The goal is to lower the massive capital barrier to entry for serious operators. The network wants experienced infrastructure providers, maybe teams who have spent years running nodes on Ethereum or Cosmos, to come over to Starknet.
But they don't just hand out free tokens to anyone who shows up. The foundational rule of this entire program revolves around one specific phrase, which is self-stake.
Yes, that is the key.
The foundation will match a validator's stake, but the validator has to put their own money on the table first. It goes back to that city analogy. It reminds me of a city trying to revitalize a struggling downtown district.
Right, like we were talking about earlier.
The local government doesn't just hand $1 million to a massive corporate big box store to build a location. Instead, they offer matching grants to local entrepreneurs.
Exactly.
The city says, if you risk your own life savings to open a bakery or a bookstore here, we will match your investment dollar for dollar.
The genius of that self-stake requirement lies in forcing the operator to have tangible skin in the game. Running a high-performance validator node is a brutal technical challenge. We aren't just talking about keeping a desktop computer plugged into the wall in your spare room.
No, we are talking about maintaining enterprise-grade server architecture with near-zero latency.
Exactly. If your server takes a fraction of a second too long to propose a block to the network, you miss your slot.
And if you miss slots, that performance score we talked about on the dashboard starts dropping. You go from 100% down to 95, then 90.
And if the foundation simply handed out delegated tokens to anyone who spun up a basic server, the network would just be flooded with grifters.
Oh, absolutely.
People would run cheap, poorly configured nodes just to soak up the free delegation yields, taking on zero personal financial risk. And when those cheap servers inevitably crashed, the network's overall performance would degrade.
But if an operator is required to buy and lock up their own STRK tokens first, it changes the entire dynamic.
Their own capital is suddenly subject to those slashing penalties we discussed. If their node goes offline or performs maliciously, their own money is burned.
So the self-stake requirement functions as an aggressive quality filter.
Exactly. The foundation only matches operators whose financial incentives are violently aligned with the flawless long-term operation of the network.
Okay, let's dig into the actual mathematics of this matching program, because this is where the anti-cartel engineering gets really aggressive.
It really does.
The Alice staking guides outline the core formula. Basically, for validators that meet all these elite performance criteria, the foundation matches their self-staked STRK at a perfect 1-to-1 ratio.
Right. A dollar for a dollar, essentially.
But it strictly caps this match at 5 million STRK per validator. And it specifically ignores any stake they are already getting from other delegation programs.
That 5 million token ceiling is the linchpin holding the entire philosophy together.
Let's run a hypothetical to make sure we are visualizing this correctly. Let's say I am a highly competent, mid-size infrastructure team. I spin up my servers, I ensure my latency is perfect, and I self-stake 1 million STRK out of my company's treasury.
Okay, solid start.
The foundation looks at my performance metrics, sees I am doing a flawless job, and they delegate an additional 1 million STRK from their own pool to my node. I now have 2 million STRK of voting power on the network.
Exactly. It's a clean transaction. You provided quality infrastructure and risked real capital. The network rewarded you by doubling your economic influence.
Okay, now let's look at the institutional whale. A massive Wall Street-backed crypto fund decides to run a validator. They drop an overwhelming 30 million STRK in self-stake.
A massive player.
The foundation reviews them, sees their performance is great, but because of the cap, the foundation only delegates 5 million STRK to them.
The cap operates exactly as intended.
See, I'm going to fight you on this. Because from a traditional business perspective, this feels deeply counterintuitive.
How so?
Well, if an institutional player brings 30 million tokens to secure this network, they are providing massive, undeniable value. They are an elite supporter.
That's true.
Capping their match at 5 million feels like a slap in the face. It feels like you are actively punishing the people who believe in the network the most. Why wouldn't you want to incentivize even more institutional capital by matching them all the way up?
I get that, but that is the trap of applying traditional corporate logic to a decentralized consensus mechanism.
Okay, explain that.
In a corporation, you absolutely cater to your biggest shareholders. But your instinct highlights exactly why blockchains are so difficult to manage. The foundation's treasury is incredibly large, but it is fundamentally finite.
Okay, so they only have a set amount of tokens to give out in total.
Right. Imagine if there were no cap. Our hypothetical whale with 30 million STRK would absorb 30 million tokens from the foundation's matching budget.
Which instantly drains the pool available for everyone else.
Worse than that, the whale would instantly double their massive voting power using the network's own money.
Oh.
The foundation would be directly financing the creation of the exact cartel they built the program to prevent.
Wow. Okay, that makes perfect sense.
The cap sends a very clear message to the mega validators. We value your participation, and your own capital will earn you great rewards. But our public treasury exists solely to subsidize decentralization.
We will not hand you the weapon you need to build a monopoly. That is wild. It is literally using capital to counteract the natural gravity of capital. The cap acts as a structural circuit breaker.
That's a perfect way to put it.
But that introduces a fascinating real-world problem. Because the one-to-one match sounds beautiful on a whiteboard, but reality is messy. The foundation has a fixed pool of STRK set aside for this. Sometimes there will be tokens left over, and sometimes the program will be too successful and they won't have enough to go around.
Algorithmic economies have to account for those edge cases. A system is really only as strong as how it handles extremes.
The documentation actually points to two specific mechanisms for these extremes: residual delegation and program cap adjustments.
Let's unpack those.
Let's start with the leftovers. After the foundation calculates all the one-to-one matches, capping everyone at 5 million, let's say there is still a chunk of STRK sitting in the budget.
They call that leftover amount the residual pool. And the mechanism they use to distribute it is perhaps the most aggressive anti-monopoly tactic in the entire program.
How does it work?
They do not distribute the leftovers proportionally. They distribute the remainder completely evenly among all the qualified validators.
Wait, evenly? Let me make sure I'm doing this math right. If the residual pool distribution comes out to, say, an extra 200,000 STRK per validator,
Okay.
the massive whale who brought 30 million tokens gets 200,000. And the startup team who only managed to scrape together 500,000 in self-stake also gets exactly 200,000.
An identical flat rate distribution, yes.
That is insane.
Consider the mathematical leverage of that decision, though.
It's like a flat rate tax rebate. If the government hands every single citizen a flat $2,000 rebate, a billionaire doesn't even notice the deposit hitting their bank account. It changes absolutely nothing about their financial power.
Right, it's a rounding error to them.
But if you hand a struggling college student $2,000, it fundamentally alters their entire financial landscape. They can fix their car, they can buy textbooks.
Exactly. And the same logic applies here. For the whale validator, an extra 200,000 STRK is a fraction of a percent of their overall voting power.
But for the new operator with only 500,000 in stake, an extra 200,000 is a massive, earth-shattering boost.
It fundamentally reshapes their competitive profile on the dashboard. That flat distribution acts as a persistent, structural tailwind exclusively for the smaller operators.
So it's constantly mathematically pushing the network toward a flatter, more egalitarian power structure.
You've got it. The whale is effectively diluted by the exact same mechanism that supercharges the startup.
That is incredibly elegant.
It really is.
But let's look at the nightmare scenario on the other end. What happens if the program is wildly successful? Tons of high-quality validators from Cosmos and Ethereum migrate over, they all drop significant self-stake, and suddenly the total required to fulfill all those one-to-one matches exceeds the fixed pool of tokens the foundation actually holds.
That triggers the program cap adjustments. When the budget is maxed out, the foundation scales everyone's match down proportionally, so the program stays within its absolute limits.
Okay, so it's like slicing a pizza at a party. If twice as many guests show up as expected, you don't just feed the first 5 people at the door and let everyone else starve.
Exactly. Everyone just gets a slightly smaller slice.
So if the budget is 10% short, everyone just gets a match of 90 cents on the dollar instead of a full one-to-one match.
That proportional scale down is just as critical for network health as the flat residual distribution. Consider what would happen if they used a first-come, first-served model instead.
Oh, man. The massive validators who launched on day 1 would max out the foundation's budget immediately, claim all the matching funds, and pull the ladder up behind them.
Precisely. And a year later, a brilliant team of infrastructure engineers discover Starknet and wants to bring their expertise to the ecosystem. If the program was tapped out, the foundation would have to turn them away.
Which would freeze the validator set in place permanently. It would kill all future competition.
By forcing a proportional scale down, the foundation ensures the door is perpetually open. No matter when a highly qualified operator arrives, they are guaranteed access to the same competitive subsidy.
The foundation just shaves a tiny fraction of a percentage off the massive validators' matches to make room for the newcomer.
Exactly. The market remains fluid, hyper-competitive, and constantly evolving.
You know, we have spent a lot of time deconstructing the underlying architecture of this system, looking at how the network attempts to manually engineer an outcome that the free market just refuses to provide.
It's heavy stuff, but it's important.
It is. But I want to pull all of this high-level treasury mechanics directly down to the listener's wallet, because this affects you directly.
Absolutely, it does.
Let's return to that dashboard we started with. When you log in to delegate your STRK, you are looking at those 4 core metrics we keep mentioning. You sort by 30-day uptime because you refuse to lose yield to bad servers. You filter for commissions under 10% so you aren't being gouged by the operator. You verify they have a solid total stake size, proving they have community trust. And you demand a performance score near 100%, proving they actually propose blocks on time.
Well, here is the beautiful part. The requirements of the retail delegator and the requirements of the Starknet Foundation are identical.
Oh, wow. Yeah. When you look for those metrics, you are actively hunting for the exact caliber of validator that qualifies for the SFDP.
Exactly.
A validator participating in this program, like the Atlas staking nodes detailed in the sources, that is a massive, flashing neon signal for your own delegation strategy.
It's the ultimate proof of quality.
It proves they aren't just a shiny logo with a massive marketing budget. It proves they have significant personal capital locked into the system. It proves their server architecture is elite enough to survive the foundation's brutal performance audits.
And most importantly, it proves their financial survival is irrevocably tied to the long-term health of the network.
The foundation is basically using its treasury to place a massive spotlight on the operators who actually deserve your delegation.
They do the heavy lifting for you. It aligns the survival of the network, the profitability of the validator, and the security of your personal yield into one cohesive mechanism.
It completely reframes the dashboard. You aren't just picking numbers anymore. You are actually participating in an active defense mechanism against cartel control.
It is a remarkable achievement in tokenomic engineering, honestly. But observing this complex machinery in motion leaves us with a rather profound question regarding the future of the technology itself.
What do you mean?
Well, we have explored how cleverly the Starknet Foundation uses its treasury to artificially subsidize decentralization today.
Right.
They are using matched funds, aggressive caps, and edge case mathematics to constantly fight the natural economic gravity that pulls capital toward monopolies.
Yeah, fighting the cartels.
But foundation treasuries, no matter how large, are fundamentally finite. Eventually, whether it is 5 years from now or 20, the fixed pools of tokens allocated for these delegation programs will dry up.
The training wheels will have to come off.
Exactly. So when that day inevitably arrives, will the culture of decentralization, this broad, diverse, highly competitive validator set that the foundation spent so much capital to cultivate, be robust enough to survive on its own merits?
Or will human convenience and raw, unmanaged market capitalism instantly drag the network right back into the hands of a massive validator cartel?